Got another laser here. Sculpfun S9. Gonna take it out of the box, put it together. Coming up. I'm Roger, welcome to the shop, and what I have here is a Sculpfun S9 laser that was provided to me to assemble, test, and demonstrate and review and all that kind of good stuff, and that's what we're going to do. And I hadn't really intended on doing an unboxing of this until I opened the box. And I saw this one's kind of uniquely packed. Usually you open a box and you've got pieces of foam and stuff to take out, but this entire thing is encased in plastic. So I thought I would show this a little bit more in detail. What I'm going to do here is just flip it over and dump the whole thing out. So I get everything kind of wrapped in a plastic bag, and that's kind of neat in case your box should get wet. But I see that there's actually kind of a lid on the foam, so I'm going to, as I take this plastic off, I'll flip it back over. Okay, this sheet you see here, this blue thing, this is actually a protection plate to put underneath your laser so you don't ruin the white standing room table. There's a protective film on it you'll need to peel off. We'll get to that later. Okay, so what do we got in this package here? Get you in close, we'll take a close look. Okay, of course this will need some assembly. Comes with some safety glasses. These are always kind of cheesy, but it's better than nothing. And actually, if you are looking to get some good quality ones, the proper color for a blue diode laser is orange, not green or red. These are better than nothing, but the actual proper color is orange because that's the opposite of blue on a color chart. And if you don't believe me, ask an optometrist. Okay, you take out the X gantry right here. And we have a manual, Sculpfun S9. A little bit more foam. We have the laser head. Shield, legs, some sample things to play with here. The motherboard supply and attached cable. Doesn't look like this is going to be too tough. Get a little bag of tools here. You have a focus spacer, 10 and 8 M&M wrench. Little brush, a couple alien wrenches in there, and a T-handle alien wrench. Got another bag here. It's got some wire ties and a couple thumb screws. This here will be your belt. And we got some little black things that probably go over the feet, I'm assuming. Anti-slip rubber. Says so right on the back there. And we got a little bag of hardware. And 3 more little bags of hardware. USB cable, power cable, power supply. And last but not least, we have the extrusions. These are 2020 extrusions. That would be a Y. Oh, they're marked left and right. That's kind of nice. Front, back. So we got the X and Y extrusions here. We'll get this stuff laid out and we'll get this put together. Okay, before I get into the assembly of this, this is going to be in great detail. This is for the person that is completely unfamiliar with this, or maybe a little bit mechanically challenged with assembling things like this, so it's going to be in great detail. If you're experienced and have done this type of thing before, this is probably going to be boring, so you might want to put it on fast forward or just skip to something you may want to see. In breaking with some of the way I've done a lot of my previous videos on assembling lasers, and I have a lot of lasers and 3D printers, I think this is going to make number 17 with the number of lasers I have. So this time I am actually going to open the book up and go step by step on the book, because people have pointed out as I've done the assembly videos, the other ones, well, that's not the way they show the steps in the book. Well, sometimes I do things just to make life easier, as they say, and I don't necessarily follow the directions step by step. But for this one, we're going to do that just to switch it up a little bit. So I'll get you in close here, we'll get the frame laid out, and we'll start with the first basic steps. As I said, they do give you a bag of tools here, and I'll probably be using this little wrench because it's handy, and obviously I'll be using the focus spacer. But I am also a fan of using what they call hex drivers or ball drivers, like this here. These happen to be made by Eklund. I have Weehaws, I have other brands. These are handier than using the little L shapes. So you'll see me using these rather than the enclosed tools, but the enclosed tools will work just fine. So let's get started. Okay, and your bags of hardware, they are actually marked on the back. For example, this one here is marked step 1. You have step 2, step 4, because step 3 is a secret. No, not really. And then you have one marked spare screws. So you've got a few extra screws and T-nuts and stuff in here to have for spares. These here are the legs. There's 3 legs here, and then the 4th leg is actually attached to the motherboard here and the controller. So that'll be your 4th leg. So what you're going to want to do here is get your parts laid out. They are marked. This one here is marked back, so we'll put that at the back. This one here is marked front. We'll put that at the front. You got right, and you have left. And you'll notice on the left extrusion here, it is marked in millimeters and centimeters. You'll want the 0 towards the front, and on the front extrusion, you want the 0 over here as well. So you want the 2 zeros to be on your left front. So we'll kind of lay that out like this so you kind of get an idea how this goes together. Okay, we'll start out with one of the legs here, and you'll notice that it's tapered and one end is wider than the other. The wide end goes up, and I've got the back left corner over here, and the way the extrusions go together is like this. So the shorter one goes on the inside of the longer one, and your leg will go on like this. Now you'll notice that with your screws, you have 2 very short ones here, which are 8 millimeter. When you look at the end of the extrusion here, you'll see a tapped hole, and it will line up on the leg like this here. And the short screw goes in that hole on the end. And don't tighten these real tight, just kind of get them started and snugged up a little bit. Then you'll notice on the side you have 2 holes, and they should line up. Your next length screw will be a 18 millimeter. Again, just get it kind of there, don't really tighten it up yet. Now on here, you'll see you have a hole that's tapped. And you'll need another one of those 18 millimeter long screws, which will go through that hole on the side. And we'll come into this extrusion right here, and it should line right up with that hole. Now, you'll have one hole left here. This is where you'll take the 30 millimeter long screw. It will pass through the Y extrusion, that's this long one here, and it'll go into the back X. There's a hole tap right in the end. Now we'll do the same thing on the other side. Do this upside down, make it a little bit easier to show. You're going to be going like this. Again, you have the little short screw will go right here. Your next longer screw will go into the hole up, not on the end one, but the next one up. Okay, you want your extrusion for the other side. And it goes on the outside like this. Your leg will sit like this. The short screw will go into this first hole out on the end, just like you did on the other side. Your next longest screw will also go into the back, just like you did on the other side. Just repeat what you did on the other side over there. And again, don't tighten them up yet. Just get them kind of snugged in there. The next 18 millimeter long screw will go into the front hole here. And the 30 millimeter screw then goes into the last hole. And again, don't tighten them up yet. We'll get to that later once we get a little bit more of this assembled so we can make sure we have everything square. Okay, now before you tighten these up, you want to lay this on a surface that is perfectly flat. This is my saw table here, and I know it is perfectly flat, so I can go ahead and tighten all these screws up. Because of the way the architecture is on this, it's a self-squaring. The way, provided the extrusions are cut straight, and I'm sure they are. I can check them with a machinist square later. Once you have everything laying perfectly flat, tighten everything up good and tight. And do that with all 4 screws. And after you're done, lay it down, make sure everything's flat, there's no wobble, nothing is wonky. Wonky's a technical term. And once you are satisfied with that, we can move on to the next step where we'll be putting the X gantry on. For that, you're going to need to turn this back over, get it right side up. And I'll get that gantry and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, this here is what they call the X-axis gantry. It also has the, this is the Z-axis up and down. This is where your laser mounts. Now the numbers on your beam over here, you should have the 0 to the front of you on the left. This flat plate will need to face you. If you look here, there are rollers, both sides. They fit onto the extrusion with 1 roller on the bottom and 2 rollers on the top. And it should just roll right on there with no problem at all. Don't let it go slamming around. And incidentally, this rod right here you see that drives your belts, don't pick this up by that rod. If you bend that rod, you're going to have all kinds of problems. So be careful not to bend that. Now, if you should have an instance where you are unable to just slide this right on because it's too tight, show you on the bottom here. These are called eccentric nuts right here. And you can take your little opening wrench they give you and you can turn those nuts a little bit to loosen these rollers up. Now we're going to have to tighten these when we get into the final adjustments, and I'll go over that in detail. But if you're unable to get this to roll on easily, you may need to back that nut off a little bit on each side. So once that is on there, we can proceed with assembling the rest of it. Okay, a little hint just to make life a little bit easier while you're doing this. If you have a little spring clamp or something like this, I'd put it on in the back so that that isn't rolling back and forth while you're trying to do some work. Just roll the X gantry to the back and leave it back there. Now, for the front, it's your front extrusion here. Again, make sure the 0 is over to the left. That fits on the inside between the 2 Y-axis pieces there. Now you need to find your step 2 bag. Get your hardware out there. And this will actually be a repeat of what you just did at the back, but with a couple different parts. On your front left corner is where the motherboard portion goes. So you'll start with the short screw, I think it's 8mm. That'll go through this hole right here next to the controller and into the end of the Y-axis extrusion. Next, you'll have the 18mm, and that will go into the forward hole on the side here. And on the end, you'll need the long one. It'll pass through everything and into the end of the front X-axis extrusion. Now on the front corner of your controller, there's another hole right here. For that, you'll need one of these 18mm screws. There's a hole tapped in the extrusion right there for it. Everything lines up perfect. If you're having an alignment problem, you may have done something wrong because this is machined very, very accurately, as I've seen here. Now you've got the last leg. Again, the short screw into the end. Your 18mm screw into the side right here. I should say into the front. Next 18mm screw will go into the back slot, and the 30mm screw will go into the front slot. Again, just get them kind of snugged up there before you do a final tightening on it. Now we want to make sure things are square up here. Of course, we can't turn it upside down to do that. This is machined accurately enough that you want to make sure your legs and all the brackets are perfectly flush with this extrusion. For example, here, there's just a hair of play. I can make sure that everything is lining up there perfectly flat. I could use a machinist square, but I'll use my machinist thumb. It's fairly accurate. And over here we want to make sure everything's lined up good, and it is. We go ahead and tighten up our screws. Same thing over here on this side. Make sure everything is good and flush and everything is lining up perfect. Go ahead and tighten those up. Okay, now you want to do another little check on that perfectly flat surface. Make sure it doesn't do this anywhere. It should sit perfectly flat, no wobble anywhere. Now since we're this far, we can put the little rubber feet on. Okay, this is fairly straightforward. You have these little rubber pads that have adhesive on the back. So you want to make sure these are clean. And it's just a matter of putting it about in the center and just folding it over like so. I'll probably be mounting this to a board to put a spoil board grid on, and I'll be making some type of feet for these to mount it, but this will keep it from skating around on your table or bench or wherever you're putting it. On this side over here, you're going to have to move that cable out of the way just a little bit in order to get this put on. The outside edge. Now to keep everything fairly square and you don't end up with a wobble, obviously you can't put it right here. I'm going to fold it over the edge. I might actually even go out here. That way it'll keep everything on the level. Then you do the same thing on the other two legs. Okay, next you'll need your belts. Comes in a little bag right here. And I'm going to go into a lot of detail on this and try to get a good close-up. So a lot of people seem to have a problem, or I shouldn't say a problem, but have trouble getting these installed correctly. So we'll start out with one of the basics here. And it's a little chilly in here, them are curled up. One side of the belt has teeth on it. You'll notice on your laser that there's a sprocket here with teeth. So the belt will have to go over that sprocket. Now what you need to do is come in under the front roller. I have this facing the front right now. And this can be a little fiddly sometimes, and it's nice if you got something you can grab a hold of the end to poke with. But you'll need to take that under that roller, then go over this roller, and then go under the back roller. And you want to pull that through so that you're about equidistant there. So as you can see, it goes under the front roller, over the top of the sprocket, under the back roller. Teeth should be facing down. Okay, next you're going to need your little step 4 bag of hardware, which consists of these small screws. They're 6mm screws and T-nuts. And you may need to back that screw up on there a little bit. You don't need to take the T-nut off, just you want yourself a little bit of play on there. Now on the end of your extrusions, where you just put your belt in, you notice there's a slot right here. You need to pass that belt through that slot. It'll come out like so. You would place your screw with the T-nut on it. The T-nut parallel to the extrusion. You get it out there pretty close to the end. Press down, and as you turn this, the T-nut will rotate 90 degrees and will lock that belt in place. Now you need to do the same thing on the other end. Pass it through the slot. And this is at the back here right now. Set your T-nut in place. Don't tighten this all the way up yet, because we're going to set belt tension after I do the belt on the other side. I like to have both belts on when I do this and make sure I'm square. I always also tighten my eccentric nuts up first, which we'll get into in a moment. So now we'll do the belt on the other side. Again, you go under one roller. And sometimes, I wish it wasn't so cool in here, I could get a better curl on this belt. If you roll it backwards, it should kind of help it poke up a little bit on the other side. You got something to poke in there to get a hold of the end, that helps. Put your belt out through the slots on both ends. Again with your T-nut, put in place, press down, it'll rotate. I'm tightening the front ones up, not tightening the back ones down yet. Just getting them put in place. Okay, I just wanted that in place. I did not want that tight yet. Now what we don't want is this. See how that wobbles? This is where your little wrench will come in handy. They give you a little open-end wrench in there. What you want is these rollers, so you can see it better here. You want these rollers to not just freewheel spin. So I can freewheel spin that real easily. So what you want to do is taking your wrench on this eccentric nut underneath here, with a 10mm end, and just rotate a little bit at a time until it gets a little firmer. That's on both sides. I still have too much wobble there. Give you a better view of these nuts. It's these little nuts right here. So you want to turn that nut so that you cannot freewheel these other rollers. This one over here is way too loose yet. But you don't want it so tight that you can't roll it either. So that feels pretty good there. I'll set this back down with the back towards me. So we got a little bit too much wobble on this side. Tighten that one up a little more. That's pretty good for now. Now I'll roll this all the way to the other end. And don't roll it fast. Do it slowly, or because as you're doing this, you're making the stepper motor turn. So now we need to do belt tension. With that all the way to the other end, because I know now that it has stopped up there and it's going to be where it needs to be perfect. We need to put some tension on these belts. So I'll loosen this up a little bit. Now don't go crazy here and use tools or anything. Just pull it finger tight, or hand tight I should say. You don't want any deflection in it, or I shouldn't say deflection, you don't want any slop in it, but you don't want it so tight it's like a rubber band either. It's kind of subjective. It's hard to describe how to do this exactly. I've just done so many of them from experience. I know how tight to make them. So once you get it turned down and tight, tighten your T-nut back down. And you'll have some little tails sticking out and you'll be tempted to cut them all off. You can cut off the ones on one end, but don't do both ends, because you're going to need to be able to make adjustments over time. You have to have something to grab onto. So that looks pretty good there. Make sure everything rolls smoothly. You don't have any kinks or anything anywhere. And while we are adjusting eccentrics and so on, see this here, how this flops and wobbles? I'll need to tighten that eccentric nut up on the bottom. Want to make sure this also rolls smoothly. You see, now that I've tightened that up, I don't have that floppy wobble. You can still move it a little bit. but it's very, very low. You got to really put some force on it to do it. Belt tension there appears to be good. A lot of tag end out here extra that probably could be cut off. Okay, so now we'll turn this back around. I'll get it to the front. A little indication of your belt tightness, as I said, it is subjective to how tight you have these belts here on the side, is to move the gantry all the way forward, tip your laser up, and it should move slowly. If it goes slamming down to the other end, you got it too loose. If it won't move at all, you got it too tight. That'll kind of give you an idea. That also goes for having the eccentric set correctly and how tight it's going to roll on there. So you've got two things to look at there. But once you have things set perfect, that'll be the good indication. Everything should move smoothly. No bumps or rolls or catches or anything. And when you pick it up, it'll roll on its own. For your next step, we're going to put the laser head on. For that, you're going to need your step 5 package. You got some wire ties and a couple of thumb screws. Let me get these out because I'm having a problem with these Ziploc bags, so I just cut them open. So we'll get all these parts out here. Now on these thumb screws, you'll notice that the laser head has 2 holes tapped in the back. And on the mount here, there are 2 slots. This is kind of self-explanatory, I guess. And this is a 5.5 watt output head, by the way, not a 10 watt. So this thumb screw will go through this hole and into the threaded hole in the back. And that will be how you set your focus. So we'll get into that in detail here. I'm just going to set this as some arbitrary height here that's easy for me to get to. And it's not a set focus height, that's just like there to hold it while I do the rest of the operations here. So now we got to put some cabling on. I'll get this turned back around. Okay, next you want to get your wire harness untied and kind of straightened out. And the first thing we're going to be connecting is the Y-axis motor, which is right here. Now you'll notice that the plug has 2 little raised spots on it. That will go towards the gantry. And we'll just plug in like so. And it will just go right in. Don't force anything. If you have to force anything, you're doing something wrong. Then you'll notice on the side of the gantry right here is a hole. That'll be a place to put a wire tie. Actually, I'm going to do it on the back side. Over here. Okay, if you've never used a wire tie before, one side has a protrusion, one side is flat. The tag end, the little pointed end, has to go through that flat side. If you put it around like this and put it through the fat side, it will not hold. You have to go through the flat side. Next, up here on the top of the gantry is the X-axis motor. You have the same thing. You have 2 little raised protrusions. Those will face you and will plug in with no effort. Do not force these. If you bend those pins, you'll have a terrible time getting them straightened out again and you may break them. On the laser head, you have 2 pins. As you look at, or I should say 2 protrusions, it's a 3-pin header. You have 2 little protrusions here. They will face the back of the laser head. And there are 2 little slots in the plug. You'll see them there. And this again, plug in, no effort. Now we need to do a little wire tying up here. There's 2 little holes up here at the top. I'm going to tie the first one right here. And then I'm going to lay this flat. And I'm going to put a second one. Make sure I've got full travel here. I'm all the way over here. I can tie my second one over here. Yeah, I'm tying the first one right behind where it is taped around this braid. And I'm putting the second one around the laser head cable itself. Get that one tied there. Make sure everything is nice and smooth and free. And then I can cut off my excess. And no, you're not going to have one of these unless you're an electrician. This particular one here is probably older than a lot of my viewers. So now you want to make sure you have nice smooth movement. Don't move these real fast because a stepper motor will generate electricity as it rotates, and you may end up damaging your stepper motors. So never go just jerking these real fast. Make sure you have nice smooth travel in all directions. That nothing hangs up. Everything's looking good there. So, ready to get this thing hooked up to a computer, and I need to go fetch one. Okay, so there's a couple ways we can get going here. We're going to start out with Laser Gerbil. That is free software that can be downloaded from the Laser Gerbil website. Up here, of course, you want to have your USB connected to your laser. And once you have Laser Gerbil installed, and open it up, little icon up here, connect, and we are connected. It was just that easy. And if you are brand new to this, there is no micro SD card or anything included with this laser. So if you need to install the driver for this, if you go up here to Tools, it'll say Install CH340 driver. And I'm not going to install it again, but you just follow through with this and it would install that driver. Well, I guess we will do it. So I'll come up here, let's click Install. Driver install success. Of course, I already had that installed, so I connected right away. Now to disconnect in Lightburn, to disconnect in Laser Gerbil, just click this here again where it says disconnect, and you are disconnected. Now we'll go to get this set up in Lightburn. So I'll close Laser Gerbil up here, open up Lightburn. Okay, so Lightburn is a paid software. You get, I think it's a 30-day free trial. And if after that, the license fee currently as of today, which is November of 2022, the license is $60. That will give you opportunity to put it on 2 different computers. And if you ask them real nice, they'll even let you put it on a 3rd one. So we'll go up here, down here to Devices. That's where you would get set up. And you want to click on Find My Laser. And then click on Next. And it didn't find it. Okay, if it doesn't want to find it, then we'll add it manually. I don't know why it's not finding it. It finds all the other ones. So we'll just cancel that. And we'll create manually. This is not difficult. It's a Gerbil type laser. Click Next. Of course, we're connecting serial USB, and we need to call it something. This is the Sculpfun S9. Okay, this is going to ask you the working area, and I believe this is 400 millimeters square, which is 15.75 inches, if you're working in inches. Y-axis will be the same. Click Next. And this front left is the origin. You do not want this set to auto home because this laser does not have limit switches and you'll end up just crashing it into the extrusion, so you want to turn that off. Click Next. Finish. Click OK. We'll go over here to Devices. And I will pick my Sculpfun S9. And right here it'll tell you that it is ready. So just out of curiosity here, I'm going to do a little moving. You can't see that, I'm just making sure everything is connected. So that's working there. I will need to get a file set up, but first I need to show you a few other things here about focus, etc. Okay, we're set up in some software and we're going to be using Lightburn here. You're going to need your focusing spacer. That's what this little silver cylinder is. And since I'm sitting on cardboard, I'm going to take the aluminum plate that they send with you, protective plate. Make sure you peel that plastic off first, otherwise when the laser burns through something, if you're doing cutting, it's going to stink. That just peels off. Okay, we'll set our protective plate down. I'm just going to put a little scrap of wood on here right now. We'll cut off scrap. I'm going to move my laser over. You could also do this from the software if you wish. Now, this cylinder sits on the corner. I need to loosen my thumb screws up here and get this dropped down. Hopefully you can see that. Right there is where you set your focus. You set that on under the corner of the laser. And then you can just tighten your thumb screws down on the back. And you pull your cylinder out. Don't lose it. Find a good place to keep it. Now we're ready to get a file set up. Okay, now to do this line engrave, one thing I always do is frame my work first. And I'm going to be working from what they call current position, my job origin being in the center. So what I want to do first here is frame this. Make sure I'm in my work area. And I am. And everything's focused and set. Just hit start. And it'll tell you it might be out of bounds because of the way I'm doing this, but yes, continue anyway. So there's our first sample. Okay, now without moving my work, I did not move my piece. I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to go back up here to layers. And I'm going to change this to fill. At 2,000 millimeters per minute, 70% power. And it will now fill that. In fact, I'm going to speed that up a little more because I don't need a real deep burn there. I got the 3,000 millimeters per minute. And we'll do a little fill on that. So we'll go back here to frame, and we'll frame our work again. And we are right there where we belong. Now we'll hit start, and this should fill that in exactly the outline we had there before. Okay, for this next one, I got a little graphic in here, a little Christmas ornament, and it is about 3.5 inches square. Actually, it's a star, 3.5 inch star. And I've got this set to cut. So at line, 300 millimeters per minute, 100% power, the 2 passes. This is on 3 millimeter plywood. Okay, I've got a little honeycomb board on there that I have. It's a little small one. The piece of plywood that's on there is 4 inches square, 3 millimeter plywood. So we want to frame this first. We are within our range there. And I'm going again, current position, starting from center. We'll hit start. Of course, it'll ask if you're might be out of bounds, and we'll let it cut. Okay, and here's our finished piece. Let's slid out here. Sometimes with little pieces, you're going to have to do a little bit of poking. Here's our little ornament. Of course, since I was on the honeycomb board, I'm not getting any back scorching. If you were cutting flat on your protective metal, the back would have black scorches on it. I sped mine up a little bit so I wouldn't get any scorching in the front here because this does not have air assist. But it does have some air blowing down through it pretty good. I did a pretty good job of clearing the smoke out. So there's our little Christmas ornament. Oh, there's how to put one of these things together, Sculpfun S9, and get it going. And kind of a quick introduction in there and getting it set up in Laser Gerbil. If you decide to use that particular software, I prefer Lightburn. That's what I use for all my other lasers. 99.9% of the time probably. It's rare that I ever get into Laser Gerbil. But this show you a couple different things you can do with it. We did the little test line engrave and then a little bit of a fill engrave on that. And of course we cut out our little star Christmas ornament, 3mm plywood. It works. And I'll be putting a lot more tests on this here coming up here in the next few weeks as we make a lot of items for Christmas. I'll have quite a few of my lasers going, and I'll have this one going as well and running some more tests through it. Okay, if you're just getting started in this, how did I know what settings to use? Well, I know from experience because I've been doing this for quite a while and I have quite a few lasers. This is a 5.5 watt laser output, not a 10 watt, not a 20 watt. It's not a CO2, it's a diode laser. There's things you can do with it and can't do with it. There's some other videos on my channel, especially the one about what not to cut on one of these. And the most notable being PVC and vinyl. Do not do that with a diode laser. It generates chlorine gas. It's extremely dangerous. And speaking of safety, even though this does have a shield on it, if you were just to walk by and glance at it, it would not bother you. If you are going to look at it and watch it, get some goggles, safety glasses, laser glasses, not just safety glasses, but glasses that are designed for a diode laser. Because if you stare at that even through that shield, you're going to damage your eyes. So something to keep in mind. That's why I got the goggles on here. So I was watching this one very close. If I'm just, walking around the shop and doing things and I've got a shielded laser running, I don't have these on because I'm not looking at it. If you do anything with glass, absolutely have these on because it will refract light all over the place and that is damaging to your eyes. So a couple of safety tips there. And again, and I mentioned this in some other videos, if you have small children and pets around, do not have them in the same room when you're operating this. Kids and dogs and cats especially want to stare at that laser beam and it will damage their eyes. So major safety thing there. So again, Sculpfun did provide this to me to test, demonstrate, which I have done so far here, and there'll be some more demonstrations coming along. And there'll be a link in the description on where to get one of these if you like. I think it would be a great entry-level laser. It's not real high-powered. It's not really, really big. It's also not real expensive. So if you just kind of want to get a taste of it and you want a machine that's going to actually do it, that's well constructed, this would be it. So if you got anything out of this, appreciate getting a thumbs up. Always helps the channel. Roger in the shop, Sculpfun S9. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.